Welcome to another episode of Kindling the Hearthfire. Long time no hear. Glad to be back, and thank you everyone who has stuck around. This podcast wouldn't exist without you, and I truly appreciate all of you who are continuing to support the show. I would also like to acknowledge and thank everyone who has supported us on Patreon. We will be continuing to be active on there, and anyone who is interested in listening to unedited recording sessions, please consider checking that out. Alright, now on to the rest of the show. Alright, the basic outline of this episode fits into the usual format, but in case you have forgotten, in case you need reminding, here is the basic outline. First, we are going to introduce a deity of the month. This month we are heading to the Italian peninsula and exploring the history of the goddess Proserpina. After that, we will be heading to the kitchen and making a seasonal dish that would be perfect for your next potluck or family dinner. Next, we will be reviewing a book and recommending a new, to me, podcast. Last but not least, we will be letting you know about events coming up in the next few months that I am looking forward to sharing with you. Let's get on with the rest of the show. Now, this time, the deity of the month comes from the southernmost part of Italy, and we can find evidence of her when she migrated from Greece in around 205 BC. The Roman Empire was in a time of strife with famine and political upheaval between the two main classes, the plebeians and the patricians. The plebeians are basically the peasant citizen Roman world, and the patricians are basically the upper class. We're having a rather difficult time of it at that point, and it was getting so bad that the plebes had threatened to secede if something wasn't done. Proserpina herself was brought over from Greece as a kind of transplant that shared many attributes of the Greek Persephone. She was installed in Ceres' temple, Liber Pater, at some point in Rome's early Republic era. She, Libera, entered Roman history as part of a so-called triadic cult alongside Ceres and Liber Pater. Collectively, these deities were divine patrons, protectors of the plebeian class, and guardians of Rome's senatorial records and written laws, housed at the temple very soon after it was built. Proserpina was officially introduced to Rome as the daughter of Ceres in the newly Romanized cult of mother and daughter. Proserpina and Ceres' cult was heavily influenced by immigrants coming from Greece. And as a way to further welcome and integrate these newcomers, priestesses of the female-only Greek Thesmorphia were granted Roman citizenship so that they could pray to the gods. Proserpina has a long and interesting history. This is only a small example, and if you want to know more, I will list some sources in the endnotes so you can do some research yourself, because there's a lot there, and it's very interesting and very intertwined. Next up, let's get cooking. This time of year always seems to be the last hurrah of summer heat before the cooler fall months come in, at least here in the Bay Area of California. So this salad seems a perfect addition to any family gathering or dinner event, or just having something out on the porch on a moderately warm fall evening. Even when you're edit that out. Definitely edit that out. I can't talk today. And yes, this is me talking out of my ass at the moment. This is what happens when I go off script. And I say, oh yeah, I can do off script. Yeah, sure, I can do off script. Okay, so as per usual with these recipes, what I'm going to do is just give you a basic list of all the ingredients and the basic way to put everything together so you get a decent meal. This particular recipe comes with sections to putting this together. First you make the vinaigrette, then you do the squash, and then you combine everything together to make the salad. Okay, so here are the ingredients for the entire thing. And I get this from Yumly. Yumly, is there an I in there? No, there's no I in there. It's Yumly. And they basically, I love this particular app. It lets you do, this is not an ad for the app, but this is where I found the recipe. And I also use the app for other things because it helps you meal plan and grocery lists and things of that nature. If you ever want to check it out. And added to that is that I've got a collection. I don't know if I can make this public. I'll try to make this public, but there was a collection feature on Yumly that I can add recipes into. And I've been adding in recipes that I've been doing for the podcast for a minute. So if you want an idea of what recipes we've already done, take a look on this collection if I can make it public. I'll have to double check that, but I'll let you know if that actually does happen. But before I get too far off topic again, here's the ingredients. It's 22 items you're going to need for this. It's a 12 ounce, where am I getting that accent from? 12 ounce spring salad mix, 1 pear, sliced or chopped, 1 apple, a sweet apple, sliced or chopped, whatever your preference, a 1/4 cup red onion, chopped, 1/2 cup pepitas, roasted, salted, 1/2 cup pomegranate seeds, 4 ounces of cheese. They recommend a soft crumbled gorgonzola, 1 nuts. Love how they put that. The recipe basically has you caramelize pecans. So whatever nut you would like to put it into your recipe. 4 ounces, 1 serving of that. 3 cups butternut squash, peeled and chopped into 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch cubes. 2 teaspoons olive oil. 1 tablespoon pure maple syrup. 1/4 teaspoon each cinnamon and salt. 1/8 teaspoon of pepper. 1 dash of cayenne. 1/2 cup pomegranate juice. 1/3 cup olive oil. 1/4 cup apple cider vinegar. 2 tablespoons sugar, or more or less to taste. 1 tablespoon poppy seeds, and those are considered optional. 1 teaspoon Dijon mustard, preferably, I'm thinking the powdered kind is what they're looking for, but pre-made Dijon mustard is perfectly fine as far as I am concerned. 1/4 each of salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and then 1/8 teaspoon of ginger powder. And those are all the ingredients. And apparently it should only take you about 45 minutes to put this all together. And let's move over to the recipe portion on the website. I had it preloaded onto the section that it was supposed to be at. Because as you know, any blog that has a recipe is going to be 3/4 anecdotes and 1/4 recipe, of course. And this is not any different. Okay, so instructions. For the pomegranate vinaigrette, combine all the pomegranate vinaigrette ingredients in bowls or a jar with a tight-fitting lid. Either whisk or shake vigorously until combined. Store in the fridge until ready to serve, up to 5 days. Shake it or whisk it before serving. And the pomegranate vinaigrette ingredients include the pomegranate juice, the olive oil, the cider vinegar, the sugar, poppy seeds, the Dijon mustard, the garlic powder, salt and pepper, and the ginger powder. And once you've got that set aside, the butternut squash, preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You line the baking sheet with foil and spray with nonstick cooking spray. Add the butternut squash, followed by the olive oil, maple syrup, cinnamon, salt, pepper, cayenne, and toss until evenly coated. Lay in a single layer and roast for 15-20 minutes, or until the squash is tender. Alright, and set that aside. When ready to serve, toss all the salad ingredients together in a large bowl. If serving right away, you don't expect leftovers, then you can drizzle with desired amounts of dressing and toss to combine. If you expect leftovers, serve dressing on the side for people to add as they like, which is a good thing to point out, actually. And there's a lot of tips on this website for what things you want to add, things you want to take out, and how to prepare everything. But the basic salad is, as I put it, make the vinaigrette, make the squash, caramelize the pecans if you like, then toss everything together and serve as you like with the dressing either already on the salad or on the side to add as you like. But it sounds like an absolutely lovely salad. And the poppy seeds and the pomegranates especially evoke a kind of underworld connection that I think is quite perfect for this time of year, as well as for the deity of the month that we were just talking about. Proserpina is very much a deity that is associated with the underworld, and pomegranates and poppy seeds are very much associated with the dead, and pomegranates in particular are associated with both Proserpina and Persephone as well. So enjoy your salads and get back to me on how good it was or how bad it was and how things went wrong. Because if you know me at all, if something goes wrong, it'll go wrong spectacularly for me. So, and I love to hear stories. So enjoy your salad, and let's move on to the review of our book. Alright, so our book of the month that I'm reviewing today, it isn't actually a physical book. I haven't actually read the physical book, but I am listening to it on audiobook through Audible, which I absolutely adore, because I like driving around and listening to an audiobook at the same time, or just late at night when you don't want to disturb anybody in the house, or by turning on the light, you could just have your phone and listen to a book. The book, I'm going to pull it up real quick because it's on my phone, which makes it all so very convenient. It is... Yes, I don't want to do that. Stop it. Okay. It is titled The American Sherlock, Murder, Forensics, and the Birth of American CSI. Kate Winkler Dawson is the author, and she is also an author of Death in the Air. And I have no idea what that book is, but we'll see. And the summary for the book is as follows. From the acclaimed author of Death in the Air comes the riveting story of the birth of criminal investigation in the 20th century. Berkeley, California, 1933. In a lab filled with curiosities, beakers, microscopes, Bunsen burners, and hundreds upon hundreds of books, sat an investigator who would go on to crack at least 2,000 cases in his 40-year career. Known as the American Sherlock Holmes, Edward Oscar Heinrich was one of America's greatest and first forensic scientists, with an uncanny knack for finding clues, establishing evidence, and deducing answers with a skill that seemed almost supernatural. Heinrich was one of the nation's first expert witnesses, working in a time when the turmoil of Prohibition led to sensationalized crime reporting and only a small, systematic study of evidence. However, With his brilliance and commanding presence in both the courtroom and at crime scenes, Heinrich spearheaded the invention of a myriad of new forensic tools that police still use today, including blood spatter analysis. Any fans of Dexter's in the room? There's ballistics, lie detector tests, and the use of fingerprints as courtroom evidence. His work, though not without its serious and some say fatal flaws, changed the course of American criminal investigation. Based on years of research and thousands of never-before-published primary source materials, American Sherlock captures the life of the man who pioneered the science our legal system now relies upon, as well as the limits of those techniques and the very human experts who wield them. That was the summary, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through this book, and I'm quite enjoying it. Not only is the reader fantastic, so if you want to pick up the Audible audiobook, go ahead. It's a lovely listen. And she describes him in her book as the American Sherlock Holmes. And in his time, he actually was attributed to that fictional detective, and he absolutely abhorred the connection because he thought it trivialized what he was doing and made him seem like a fictional character in some sort of novel. He didn't care for that connection at all. What we see in the book is a collection of both his written journals and his letters to friends and very personal journals that he kept for many, many years. And we get a view of the man that few were able to see in his lifetime, because he was a very private man and he was very systematic in collecting of information and hoarding information. You'll see in the book, and he's a very interesting man, but a very flawed man, as well as most humans are. I mean, there are occasional exceptions, but most people are human and have flaws, and this particular gentleman is not limited in the amount of flaws that he does have, but he is still a very interesting character to look at, and he did pioneer the modern CSI era of modern day policing and detective agencies and science in general, really. It's a very interesting read. I would definitely recommend it to anyone who is very interested in just the title saying a modern day American Sherlock Holmes. Also people who are interested in the Prohibition era, especially crime in that era. This book gives you a very good glimpse of what was going on in that era, what kind of characters were running around. It's very interesting on quite a lot of levels, and I'm very impatient to actually finish. So I would definitely recommend this book to anybody who wants any of those things, or just wants an interesting book to read on and off when they have a moment. So it's available, once again, on audiobook, on Audible. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and many other booksellers as well. And if you want to pick up a copy and take a look, I would definitely recommend this book. Okay? So I hope you all enjoy that book. And moving on, we have our recommendation for a podcast. Alright, moving on, we have our podcast recommendations. I've got 2 recommendations this time around because 1, I can't remember if I recommended them before, and 2, I love these particular podcasts, and anyone who's interested in either learning about Irish culture or how to describe this one podcast without being too flippant about it. Well, anyway, let's just introduce the podcast and I'll get into the individual topics of what they cover with them. Let's see. There's the Blind Boy podcast. I'm not sure if I mentioned this particular podcast before, but it's always worth a mention. Blind Boy is an entertainer that does shows around the world, and he basically has conversations with interesting people about interesting topics. And he is based in Ireland, so the way he was recommended to me was he was very much, he was very much based in Ireland from an Irish perspective, looking out at the world, the rest of the world. And I was looking into learning more about Irish culture and things of that nature at the time, and he was recommended to me for that reason. And he's a very interesting character. I love listening to all of his talks. He tends to get, well, it's not really a downside, but he gets rambly a bit, in the way that I kind of get rambly occasionally, going off on tangents and random topics. But everything he says is very interesting, and it's very based in reality, and I don't want to say that. It's based on very deep thoughts and very thought-provoking, and a lot of it has to do with being honest about your mental health issues and about lots of topics and issues that are prevalent in Ireland. And gosh, what is the word I'm looking for? That's not the word I'm looking for. It's very much into the social atmosphere of Ireland and the world in general, and very socially progressive and very open about mental health issues and talking about them and things like that. And it's also a very interesting podcast. I mean, last week I was just listening to a podcast. Well, context here. I was speaking to my partner about pumpkin spice lattes and how they were colonization tools and things like that. And then he drops a podcast talking about the colonial history of the pumpkin spice latte. And I'm like, man, that's what I was just talking about. And those are the kind of topics that he talks about. And it was a really, really interesting, thought-provoking podcast. And I loved listening to it. So, have a listen if you like. Look him up. I was told that there was a lot of lore connected to each podcast. It was kind of like Welcome to Night Vale in that way, where you would like to listen to past episodes before listening to current ones just to catch up on the lore. You don't have to. I myself went all the way back to the very first episode and listened to all of the episodes up until the current point. And there's a lot to be said about listening to the lore. It does add a lot to the podcast, but you can listen to the podcast just as enjoyably without going all the way back. So take a look and see if you like him. I definitely do and definitely would recommend him. And he's available on most podcasting streaming services. He was on Acast for a very long time, and I listened to him personally on... I'm blanking on the name, which is kind of hilarious, because I'm recording on this particular service at the moment. Spotify, yes. I listened to him on Spotify. So take a look, have a listen, and see if you like. And the second recommendation that I would definitely put out there is Divine Authenticity. And the host is Chloe Taylor. And as the name suggests, it is very much about divine authenticity. And she's a very down-to-earth, easy to listen to woman, and she's very honest, she's very personable, she is comfortable with being very vulnerable on these podcasts about divine authenticity and being authentic to yourself and keeping to your what is the phrase that I'm looking for? To thine own self be true. that's kind of her motto there, being true to yourself and following the path that you need to follow. And she's very down to earth. She's very well spoken, but she's also very, very honest. And she has a tarot reading YouTube channel, and she calls all her listeners pumpkins, and they're coming around in the pumpkin patch. Her newest reiteration of the podcast is the Cozy Bitches Club, I think is what it is. She had a whole episode on trying to figure out what the name for that was, and she liked Cozy Bitches, but she also has, understandably, people don't really like using the word bitches in some phrases, but so she does Cozy Witches Club. That's how she calls people that are listening to her podcast. She's very autumnal, very cozy, very heavy on the witchy feel, the witchy vibe, pagany witchy vibe. But she's also very, very down to earth and very cozy and very helpful and very loving personality. So if you're into that and you would like some more divine authenticity in your life and some more coziness as well, definitely take a look. She's I'm listening to her on Spotify once again, but she's on YouTube as well. She occasionally does videos as well, and she's got merch going up that I'm actually going to take a look at with the Cozy Bitch merch that's going up. But have a look at her website and her podcast, and also her YouTube channel if you're into tarot as well, tarot readings and such. That's where I discovered her first off, because I am also a tarot reader, and that's where I discovered her. And I loved her tarot YouTube channel, and I discovered that she also had a podcast. So I'm like, oh, podcast, let's take a look at that. And I haven't looked back, and I've been very happy. All right, well, those are my two podcasts that I would definitely recommend: Blind Boy Podcast and The Divine Authenticity by Chloe Taylor. If I can talk today. Anyway, so there we go. There's your two recommendations. And next up, we are moving on to the calendar for the next 3 months. Okay, next up, we have our calendar for the next couple of months. 3 months, to be clear. We've got 3 events coming up. The first of which is the 8 Winds ADF Festival. And this is an annual festival. There was a couple of years where there wasn't one because pandemic, that happened. But this particular festival, it was supposed to be early on this year, but they moved it because there was going to be over 100-degree weather at the particular location. So they decided to move it to the middle of October because they thought it would be a little bit cooler then. And it's going to be, but here you go. Here's the updated information here. They have a website where you can still register for this festival, and it is going to be October 12th through the 15th at Clear Lake State Park in Kellysville, California. And here's a description from the website. Join us for a weekend of community, learning, and creativity, and connecting with the outdoors. This event is open to all Druid, heathen, and pagan, and other open-minded guests. And all the information you can find for registration is on the website, but those are the dates. That is the location, and it's a festival that I sadly will not be going to because I'm kind of stuck at home during October, sadly. But they usually have some Zoom connections on there, but let me double check. No, they don't mention it. But they've got a lot of interesting groups coming in, and they've got lots of interesting workshops and lots of things to see, and a lot of really good people are going to be there, and the food is definitely going to be good too. Not that I would ever go for just the food, right? Right. Anyway, but if you would like to check that out, check out their website. It will be on the show notes, all the website with all the information on how to get registered and directions to the site. All right, and next up we have Choke Cherry Groves, Rocky Mountain Retreat. And this is happening, whether fortunately or unfortunately, during the same week as the Eight Winds Festival. But let's see, when is it showing up? It is the October 13th through the 15th. So if you want to go to one, if you want to go to both, if you really want to, either you can go to the first day over at the festival for Eight Winds, or if you don't want to do all that driving because they're in quite different areas of the country, there is a Zoom component to the Choke Cherries Mountain Retreat. And I myself will not be going physically, but I'm planning on going through Zoom and seeing all the wonderful things that they've got going there. And let me give you a brief description of this. Our annual Rocky Mountain Retreat is coming up fast, and we have some great speakers lined up. Our overall theme this year is personal practice with the kindreds, something I'm very interested in at the moment. Well, always, but definitely at the moment. And how we relate to the ancestors, land spirits, and deities. We will start with an open Zoom hangout session starting at 6 p.m. MDT on Friday evening, followed by a bardic circle. This will be open to anyone, whether or not they've paid for the rest of the weekend, although we may ask aspiring bards to sign up with us first. And there's a lot of great speakers coming to this, and the price for the weekend is about $20, and it sounds like a great weekend to pop in, and I can't wait. So that is the second of the 3 events that are happening up. October's pretty busy right now. And the next event that's coming up, let me head over to Facebook because they've got a pretty good description of this next event. Or is it on Facebook? Yes, it is on Facebook. Everything's on Facebook. No, not everything is on Facebook. No, not everything is on Facebook. Half of my family is not on Facebook. Let's see. They've got a Facebook group for this pretty neat little event that's coming up again this year. It's an annual event, an annual long-term event. It's the Prayer a Day project, which I absolutely adore, looking at this particular part of Facebook where they have basically a prayer every single day posted on their Facebook group. And it's always just lovely to look at. And it's, I don't know much about the event itself, but it's the Prayer a Day project, and it's basically you create a prayer every single day of, I believe it's November. It kind of runs concurrent with most of the other things that are going on in November. NaNoWriMo and the drawing one, I can't remember the name of that one, but they also have a Prayer Day project as well. And this particular person that I'm aware of was doing the Prayer Day project, and they not only did it in November, they did it for several years concurrently. I think they've stopped the Prayer Day every single day of the year, but they still have the Prayer Day project that goes on in November, and they collect prayers from all sorts of people all the way around the world. And there's a rather large and wonderful collection of them on the Facebook group if you're ever interested in taking a look at that. Yeah, Brightening the Darkening Days of November. And this is from a post from last year stating, it's the home stretch. As you finish your last contributions, feel free to use whichever of these celebration images strikes your fancy. And they've got a couple of images here, and it's fantastic images. Everyone who contributed even one prayer or other offering of praise this month helped to brighten the darkening days of November. Thank you so much for making this another wonderful year of a prayer a day. And this was from Reverend Jan Avende. I believe that's how you pronounce it, but they have a number of prayers in here that I absolutely adore. And if you ever want to take a look at the hashtag prayer a day, there's a lovely collection of things that are absolutely lovely to look at if you ever feel the need for that sort of thing. But that event is coming up in November, starting up November 1st. So if you want to take a look up Prayer a Day Project, and they should give you all the details on there. But that's coming up. But that is it for our calendar. And just for future reference, if you would like to add an event to the calendar, either let me know through the Facebook group for Kindling the Hearthfire on Facebook. But if you're not on Facebook or you want to share it privately with me, the email for the podcast is kindlingthehearthfire@gmail.com. Fairly simple, name of the podcast @gmail.com. And I keep an eye out on those types of things on the podcast. And yeah, so if you have any additions to the calendar, let me know through there or on Facebook. Okay, and that wraps it up for the calendar for this time around. Alright, and that wraps it up for today's podcast. And I want to thank you again for everyone for listening. And if you would like to help support the podcast, or in any way, shape, or form, there are a number of ways you can do that. You could favorite us on Facebook, do like on the podcast, on whatever streaming platform you find us on. Many different ways you can support the podcast. Those are the main ways, but there's also on Patreon where we have a sliding scale. I'm just implementing this sliding scale as I saw on another podcast, because it lets people, for a minimum amount of effort, you can have access to all the little extras, also help the podcast and tell us that, hey, this is a great podcast, I would like to support you, but I don't have a lot of monetary stuff to give. Give what you can. You can give as little as $1 on Patreon and get access to everything we have on Patreon. And there's been a reset on Patreon as of late, so a lot of things on there got lost, and so we're starting over from scratch. But if you'd like to help out the podcast for as little as $1, you get access to unedited audio versions of the podcast, which can be up to an hour of content, in case you were wondering. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but it's all unedited and only available on Patreon to those select few who want to hear me ramble for hours on end without stopping. And going off script is something that I do occasionally, and most of my podcasts are scripted for the reason that I can get off on tangents, and while sometimes they can be enjoyable, sometimes they can be tangents in best and worst ways. But anyway, if you would like to help support the podcast, we have a Patreon available, and for as little as $1, you can help us out for keeping the lights on and get access to those extra rambly minutes with unedited audio versions of the podcast. But anyway, getting back to that. And also another thing that I always forget to mention is there actually is a prayer list on Facebook. And if you have a prayer that needs to be said, or something you would like some people to send their energy to, or you just want events and things are going on and you need some hugs and comfort, there is a prayer list, and it is a Facebook group. But if you would like to share your prayers or your needs with me privately, You can also message me through, once again, Facebook, but you can also use the podcast website as well. I don't get a lot of traffic on the podcasts. I didn't say website, did I? It's the podcast's email. Contact me through the email for the podcast, and I will be sure to get back with you as soon as I possibly can. I'm the only one running the show at the moment, so, well, I always have been the only one running the show, and it's a lot of work to run a podcast, so I will be with you as soon as I possibly can, and if you would like, I can share your prayers on the Facebook group, and there's a very active community on there, and they are very loving individuals, and it's a private group, so your prayer requests will be very much kept private within the group. At least I hope so. That's not very endearing, is it? It is a private group, so your prayers will be kept private within the group. Full stop. But yeah, always forget to mention that, but it is a big part of the reason why I do this podcast is community building and being there for my community and having a place to go to when you don't have a lot of physical community around you. Pandemic showed us how it was to be very secluded from the rest of our neighbors and even the people that are 5 feet away from us. And it's something that I've had to come into grips with in the recent years when it's just me by myself all alone in the world at the moment. And having a community there behind me is always extremely helpful, and I absolutely love to have that sort of backing. And I wanted to offer that to other people. But before I get too rambling, that is the end of the podcast. Please send me messages on the email if you would like to get in touch with me, talk with me, have comments about the podcast. They've got a section on Spotify where you can do comments and things like that. Do that if you can. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful month. And this is the 28th of September. This is going out. Noisy people. Anyway, this is going out on the 28th of September. So, everyone is having a good September, and I hope everyone has a wonderful October and the rest of the holidays. Alright, talk to you later. Bye. Oh, and may you always pray with a good fire.